I'm going to quickly cut across to Dr. Naresh Trehan, who's the chairman and MD at Vedanta, to give us an understanding on what could have really happened. Dr. Naresh, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. KK gone too soon. At a young age of 53, he had a massive heart attack. He complained of excessive heat at that venue. He was, instead of being taken to a hospital, he was rushed to a hotel where he's said to have collapsed. And that's when they moved him to a hospital where he was declared brought dead. Several theories and suspicion on what could have really happened. We'd like to hear from you.
So, in the absence of a proper history and background, it's difficult to say what could be the cause. But some of the things that one has to be careful about is today we know that people who have family history of heart disease, people who have diabetes, and as we know that KK did not smoke or drink, so those two factors were not there. But the two significant factors that play a role in younger people getting heart disease are basically genetic, stress, which I'm sure any performer has to go through a lot. And three, if there is diabetes, it is an added significant risk factor. So what happened in that concert? Obviously, a concert is like a high intensity, high energy event. And if there was a pre-existing heart disease, which he may or may not have realized, and contributing factors can be the strenuous 2 hours that he spent there, the exhaustion, and also the heat. So dehydration also precipitates heart attacks in pre-existing blockages in the arteries. So it could be any one of those reasons. And we don't know in the absence of an autopsy report yet whether it was really a heart attack or was it something else.
Trehan, we know a heat stroke or heat exhaustion is a common phenomena, especially during the summers. We know that you step out and you feel faint due to excessive heat. So a heat stroke could be common. How could that link to the heart? Could that really have a link to your heart?
No, see, what does a heat stroke mean? I mean, it means that it does not affect the heart in that direct a manner, but it does create dehydration. So dehydration itself will increase the thickness of your blood, and that means that if there are pre-existing blockages already, the blood can clot. So it can enhance the clotting of the blood, and in situations like this, when there is pre-existing disease, stress, exhaustion, heat stroke, and also the fact that the stress one goes through can raise your blood pressure, and a lot of performers during their performance do have an elevated blood pressure because they are really energized at that time. And also, so all these things put together can precipitate a heart attack. But one of the things, see, there are two mechanisms in which this kind of thing would have happened. One is that there were already pre-existing blockages in the arteries. They may have been 50, 60, 70, 80%. And then something happens which precipitates the blood, or the plaque ruptures, and they get a clot in the artery and they get a heart attack. The second thing that can happen, which does happen in events like this, is that you have a very high blood pressure which ruptures the artery. The inner lining of the artery actually breaks. And if that happens, what we call dissection. Dissection can give you an acute heart attack immediately. So those are the mechanisms which are the most common you will find. And that's why when we say you have had athletes drop dead, you have people on a bicycle, and then COVID is another added risk factor which has come into play in the pandemic. And so all this has to be taken into consideration to say what could be the immediate tragic event that happened, what caused it. So in a way, now what could have been done, whether we should have taken to the hospital together immediately or to the hotel, those are things that we don't know, and we can just tell you medically that this is possible because of the factors that I just enumerated.
Dr. Trehan, and like you did say, whatever we discuss now in retrospect could be futile. But the fact that he felt slightly uneasy, we hear contradictory reports saying that he went to the hotel and then that's where he threw up, he wasn't able to handle that sickness, and then he collapsed. And that's when he was rushed to the hospital. Do you think there could have been error in judgment? Soon after the concert, he was feeling uneasy. He should have been taken to the hospital first.
No. See, this is all a matter of spec. Who did what? Because, we should not be speculating. It's a very tragic event. It's a big loss to the country and to the music industry. And I think that unnecessary speculation on this should not be done. The autopsy report will be available a little later in the day, and we'll know the true cause. But what I was using this interaction with you was to warn people. To warn people that, look, if you have, like today we say, know your genes. If you have history of heart disease in the family, then you should be following a certain regimen, which we have described. And we say, okay, we do a checkup at this stage, that's how to go about in subsequent checkups so that we can keep these people safe. So those are the things that we need to really pay attention to. That when a reminder comes like this, when a healthy person who's a singer, who has this sudden death happens, that it sends alarm waves around us. It also, sends a shiver up your body to say it can happen to anybody. But can we do anything? So today we are at a stage in medicine, especially in cardiology and cardiac sciences, that we can actually do a predictive model for a given individual. We know all the contributing factors. I mean, with a great degree of accuracy, we can tell people who are at a higher risk of getting a heart attack and those who are not. And also give a little bit of a follow-up to say, this is where we have to check periodically, milestone it for that individual, rather than telling the whole country that you need to do this, that, these. That science has now come. The molecular science that we have today, the genetic science that we have today, makes it eminently predictable for us to say, with great degree of accuracy, who are the people at risk. And those people who are at risk have to be careful. And I'll tell you one very important fact, that heart attacks, high blood pressure, stress, they're all related. So you can't tell the whole world, don't do any stressful work, but the people who are at risk, which we can determine, they should actually manage their lifestyle a little differently than people who do not have that high risk.
We know precaution is certainly better than post-mortem, and that's what we see here. If he possibly had a history of heart disease, then that, or anyone for that matter, as per your words, must be slightly more careful. But what we're aghast here is that KK as a singer had a very clean, super clean lifestyle, never smoked, didn't drink. We hear that he never stayed up late, was not known for party life as such. And it's not like him singing at a concert was a new phenomenon for him. He's done this extensively over his 20-odd years of his career. And this certainly wasn't something that his body received a shock with. He carries out riyaz every day. He sings to high tunes and high pitch on a regular basis, records on a daily basis. So for a man who's singing as his daily routine, this comes as a shock.
That's the point I'm making to you. That you can have silent heart disease developing inside you, which you don't know about. It can be detected with a great degree of success by the tests that we prescribe. So unless he had a regular checkup, which is very possible, I don't know what the history is. But what I'm saying, you take this, loss as a communication to all the people who are actually listening to this, to say, please calibrate yourself as an individual. There are general rules and there are individual rules. So just because somebody is not drinking, not smoking, not doing any other indulgences, does not mean that they are not getting heart disease inside. Yes, smoking, drinking does contribute to development of heart disease. But like I said, anybody can get heart disease, so I'll give you a data on that. If you do not have any risk factors, in India, there is somewhere a chance around from 8 to 10% that you will get heart disease just by the makeup of our genes, our eating habits, our lifestyles. So all those things contribute to India's heart disease burden being at least 2 to 3 times that of the United States. Although the fact is that in the United States, they abuse diet hugely. There is more obesity in the United States than there is in India. But we have a very sedentary lifestyle. We have a rich diet also. And we have a genetic propensity which is higher than most countries in the world. So given these 3 factors, we are at risk. Now you add another risk to that, there is known heart disease in your family, your chances of getting heart disease doubles. So that means you have to be that much more careful in monitoring your risk factors, which you can control. There are many things we can control. Like we say, if you have biochemical defect, like your cholesterol, all the other parameters that we measure can be controlled today. Stress busting can be done. We prescribe yoga is the best thing for you to incorporate in your life. Pranayama is very important, especially if you have a stressful life. Exercise is paramount. So if you do these things, that you can actually reverse some of the risk factors. And if that be so, you can also reduce the chances of getting a heart attack. So I am very clear in my communication that no speculation on what happened to KK. We will find out soon from the autopsy report. But as a general reminder to all of us that this tragedy is lurking, and many people have lost their lives to heart attacks and things like that, that we should pay attention. We should pay attention generally, and we should pay attention individually, because the genetic imprint will tell you where you are headed. So if you have heart disease, you know your chances of getting heart disease is double if your family has it. If you have diabetes in the family, again, the chances of getting diabetes for the children is double. And if you have risk of both, that means you have a very high risk of developing heart disease. So I think that's the warning that I would like to give. And beyond that, I do not want to speculate on what happened, what should have been done and what should not have been done.
Dr. Trehan, here we're looking at a spree of cases of such nature, starting with Puneet Rajkumar. You also had Siddharth Shukla, all dying at a very young age. Now KK as well. So leads me to this question of, is this a more recent phenomenon, at least among the youth we're seeing, or youngsters that we're seeing tragic cases like this because of a high competitive lifestyle, a competitive, challenging environment? Do you see this as a lot often that's coming to fore, at least cases to you that are coming among the youth today?
You know, it certainly is a contributing factor. For many years, we have known that heart disease occurs in Indians 2 to 3 times that of people in the Western world. And it occurs 10 years before the average in the Western world. So if like I was in New York for 20 years, I was practicing there, I trained there, I practiced there. If we saw a patient below the age of 50 who had triple vessel disease or critical blockages in their arteries, we used to be surprised. Today, when I came back to India, the average age was 40. So 40 and above, you would start seeing patients who had coronary artery disease. Of course, as the age advances, 50, 60, it goes up. But if you saw a case of 40 or below 40, from 30 to 40, that was a surprising thing in the US. Over here, I see cases on a regular basis. Even today, I would have seen patients who are now in their late 30s, early 40s, who have severe heart disease. They do. Now, this is a clear warning to all of us as Indians, that we have a higher propensity to develop heart disease. We must try to neutralize it for ourselves and our families and community at large. That's what we keep talking about all day.
Float, Dr. Trehan, not to take too much of your precious time, a few telltale signs if you are feeling uneasy, what's to keep a quick note of, and what should you be ideally doing if you don't feel fit enough at that point?
Very important question. The thing to practice is look for the signs or early warnings of heart disease. So if a person is getting repeated pressure, burning, pain in the chest by doing a certain activity like a fast walk or running or weightlifting, or when you get angry, if you're faced with stress, if that recurs again and again, that means that is exertional angina. Now, that will give you a first early warning, but also along with that, one must understand that if you are a diabetic for a long time, you will not get these pain most of the time. So today we prescribe, if you have family history of heart disease, family history of diabetes, get your first checkup by the age of 25. Today we have a panel of tests, and they are not very costly, which will give you exactly where an individual is at that age. Depending on what we find, we will prescribe whether it should be repeated in 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, depending on the risk factors. And if intervention is to be done to alter the risk factors, it should be done early. Even if you do not have history of heart disease in your family or diabetes in your family, we recommend that by the age of 30, each individual should have had their first checkup. Because I'll tell you, not only does heart disease, but blood pressure is a big killer. 26% of the executives who came to our hospital, we did a study for executive checkup, 26% had either blood pressure, which they did not know about, or a very high tendency to develop one in the near future. So these are silent killers. Heart disease, blood pressure, diabetes. You may not know that you have diabetes till you get a checkup, because they don't announce that it's happening. So that's why pay attention to your body, pay attention to your family history, and also get a regular checkup by the age of 25 if you have positive history, by the age of 30 if you don't. And then we can guide you from there on.
You know, when you speak of regular checkup, a quick word on how regular can your checkups be? Because you can't get an ECG done way too often. And also a quick word of advice on how to differentiate between indigestion or maybe gastric issues with actual issues of the heart.
So that's one of the biggest problems that we face in the Indian diaspora, because of the fact that we eat a lot of chili food, lot of masala, and that very frequently people will get some acidity, and even when they are getting chest pain from heart disease, they may mistake it for acidity and actually not lose their lives even. Lots of people have lost their life just being mistaken. So what we say is, if you are getting acidity, use an antacid or one of those prescribed medicines like protein pump inhibitor. And if it does not go away, then in 15 minutes you should entertain the idea that you may be getting heart attack. And then the easiest thing to do is to go for a cardiogram in the neighborhood hospital, neighborhood clinic. Just get a cardiogram. And that will give us an indicator most of the time that heart attacks are happening. So if you are forewarned, intervention at that time can actually save your life right away, even if you are getting a heart attack, because there are medicines available today to dissolve the clot that blocks the artery. So if you get there in time, and we say that the heart, if it takes more than 60 minutes, then the damage becomes more and more permanent. So the golden hour is the first 60 minutes from the beginning of a heart attack. If you can get help in the meantime, you are that much going to benefit for the rest of your life, because we can intervene very early. So I think that one should not feel console yourself, in other words, to say, no, it couldn't be, it must be acidity.
Yeah.
If it is recurrent, that's angina. And if it doesn't go away with an antacid, it's angina. Presume it's angina till we prove it otherwise. Because if you make a mistake, it may be very consequential for the rest of your life. So today we are, the whole thought process in medicine has changed. Today, we have, say, take Vedanta, we have such a huge stress, emphasis on wellness. We are trying to guide people to wellness so that they can do. It's not how long you live, it's how healthy you live. So the whole idea is to try to make people live healthier, longer. And it is possible today, provided somebody makes that little effort to go get a checkup and then actually cooperate with the prescribed outline for their life. And it can be done today very, very accurately.
Dr. Trehan, highly appreciate that very important piece of advice. Certainly will go a long way. Very heartbreaking to hear the demise of KK at such a young age of 53. Thank you very much for joining us.